Snetterton ordered up wind, tyre controversy, drive back through the field, and a side of dough balls. This is the Snetterton Review.
Hello and welcome back to the British Touring Car Podcast. We are going to bring you up to date with all the action from yesterday at Snetterton. We were there and it was a little blustery, as you alluded to, wasn't it?
Very, very windy. It does turn out that, in my case at least, it's not going to be a public health announcement, but sun cream did really help stop the wind for me. Yeah. So I've managed to come home not as red-faced as when I left Donington at the start of the season. But yes, it was a blustery day, an interesting day for conditions. We had some cooler races, some warmer races, some very blustery races.
Spattering of rain when there was no racing happening at all, which, yeah.
Yep. You were sort of Michael Fish on the weather forecast with your radar up and watching the clouds come over.
It actually came to fruition, isn't it? It was just that little bit of rain that we had. But yeah,
I have to say, our new setup of the double chair and the big umbrella. Yes. I was the driest I've been in a rain shower at a touring car meet. So that was very good indeed. There are quite a few negatives that I will get to probably towards the end of the podcast. We'll get all the action out of the way first, but we'll come back to that. That's the hook, isn't it? That's the hook. Obviously, all the action began on Saturday, which was again mixed conditions, wet and dry. The qualifying was in the dry, however, and we'll start with what happened on Saturday.
Yeah, so there was one big name, really, that went out nice and early. A certain Mr. Jake Hill managed to qualify 20th.
The BMWs were going to go well here this weekend. We did say that they were going to go very well.
Good that we've got good wheel knowledge, isn't it? Because he was 20th. We had Moffat in 13th, Moffat in 14th, De Leon in 13th, and Rainford in 11th. So no BMW in the top 10, which just shows the progress that they've made.
Yes, I've got already an early theory that I think they might struggle over long laps this season.
Okay.
We'll see.
I think they're going to struggle in the cooler temperatures, which is what we've seen this weekend. We saw how hot it was at Brands.
Donington wasn't cold.
No, but we knew that they'd had this weight.
Yeah, maybe.
This weight issue.
Maybe.
So I think if we see sort of like a really hot Thruxton, they could well go well. And yeah, I think they're going to struggle in cooler conditions, which has always been an issue with the BMW.
I mean, I don't want to give away our Thruxton preview, but the way the Hyundai is, I can't see anything other than a Hyundai 1.5.
Josh Cook.
Oh, yeah, okay. A Hyundai 1.2, Cook third.
Yes.
He's like the Crystal Palace at Thruxton, isn't he? Just put them in the finishing 12th.
Yeah, so we had a rather interesting driver change before the weekend. Michael Crease would allow a long-term backer of his to drive this weekend in Ryan Bensley, who has taken part in TCR, so he's not a complete and utter novice. But he would qualify at the back of the grid.
Depends on your view of TCR.
Yeah. And there are some questions going forward, shall we say, which I think we'll clear up at the end of the pod, if that's okay.
Yeah, we'll pick up at the end. That's fine. Okay.
And then
what we'll just quickly say on him is I don't think he disgraced himself this weekend at all. He was definitely on the pace. He was on the pace in qualifying. Wasn't being left behind. Sure. I mean, he finished where we expected, towards the back of the field. However, he wasn't sort of completely off the rest of the pack, was he? So
the top qualifying Toyota finished in 10th, which was respectable for how we thought the Toyota was going to do this weekend. But it was really the Fords and the Hyundais this weekend that were dominant, and Camish took pole position from Ingram by 0.03 of a second.
Yeah, probably worth just quickly mentioning that Sutton was unable to really contest the final Fast 6 qualifying with a electrical problem.
Something which he'd been suffering from all day. He had the electrical issue in FP2 as well, which ended his session early. But yeah, it put the kibosh on any lap in Q3.
Yep. Right, should we get on to race one?
Plenty of action this weekend.
Yeah, plenty of action. And of course, the age-old debate over tyres. So we'll cover... Where are we going to cover tyres? Later? Should we do the racing first?
We'll get your soapbox out later.
Okay, so obviously the decision had to be made to whether you ran the hard or soft tyre in race one. Most people at the front went with the soft, as you'd expect. However, Mikey Doble was the highest of the cars to run the hard tyre, effectively conceding the place he'd earned in qualifying on the Saturday. However, this would turn out to be a masterstroke, as we'll get to.
Yeah, his interview after race 3 let us know that it was a tactical decision and that that's what he wanted to do to get the best result out of the weekend. And it's interesting to see how different teams and different drivers go about this. That is the main interesting bit about the tyres, because there is so much of an offset. But yeah, Camish on pole. A poor start from Rowbottom, and Sutton was flying.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning with Camish that there was some doubt about his start, whether it was legal or not. Having looked back, I think he does jump, but I think he gets away because I think he jumps the second the lights go out. I think if you watch it back on
He's almost guessed it.
Or got lucky.
Yeah,
because the car definitely hops. And they were saying afterwards that, because Paul O'Neill was saying, well, he hasn't gained an advantage, but then Jade pointed out it doesn't matter if you move before the lights, advantage or not, you will be penalised.
Yeah.
I've watched it back several times and tried to. My reactions aren't as good as a racing driver's, as it turns out. Even though there's a lag on my skybox, I think that he gets
the batteries, mate.
Yeah, I think he gets away with it on the basis that I think he hops the second the lights drop, which I think probably just saves him. Could be wrong. Obviously the data has been analysed afterwards because his start was under investigation post race, and obviously he kept the win. So.
Do you remember the controversy of when Bottas almost guessed the lights and his reaction time was deemed too quick?
Yeah, well, I think that may have well. I could be doing Dan Cam a disservice here, but I think it's probably a bit more luck than judgment. And if it isn't, I apologise.
So Sutton goes from 6th to 3rd round the outside with a lovely move into Ritchie's. And as we all probably guessed, Double had a poor start with his hard tyre and would lose a couple of positions on the first lap.
Toyota continued their what's the word I'm looking for? Their habit, their style this season of running as close together as possible and fighting each other. And the same will come to pass here down to Agostini. I have to say, I don't think the move was on from Taylor Smith at all. The door was perhaps slightly ajar, and this would be the sort of
crowbar,
the metaphor of the police busting your door down at 6 a.m. with the big red hammer thing they have, because. Yeah, the door might have been slightly ajar, and Aaron Taylor Swift decided he could fit an entire Toyota down the inside, which he couldn't do. He had to put 2 wheels on the grass to do so. This was off on Shedden.
There also turned out to be Jake Hill behind the door.
Yes, he was sort of trying to keep it stopped with his foot, and then in fairness to Hill, he gets turned around by Shedden, who's been hit by Aaron Taylor Smith, completely innocent party and all of it, and it ruined his race.
It was a hefty hit. That's where we were sitting this weekend, so we saw a decent amount of the action down there. But yeah, broke a rear toe link, spun Hill around, put him down to the back, and he had to come in and get some bits changed. He did manage to get back out and do a few testing laps, but being on the hard tyre as he was for the opening race, because he was so far down the grid.
That was the only saving grace for him, wasn't it? That realistically, would he have got to somewhere around 8th? Probably not on that hard tyre.
Even if his dad thought so.
But yeah, he was not going to get too high on the hard tyre. That's the only saving grace. However, good luck telling Hill in the pit lane. Oh, at least the hard tyre's gone. Yeah, not ideal. And I'm surprised Taylor Swift got away with not having a penalty for that personally, because I don't think the move was ever on.
Well, you mentioned penalty for Toyota, and Ronan Pearson actually got a drive-through penalty for having personnel on the grid too close to the start of the race.
Yeah,
we've seen this happen once before this season already. It's pretty much a slam dunk.
It is. I hate the rule because it's not the driver's fault, and I think you should punish the team with a fine or something like that rather than the driver. But the rules are the rules, and the rules are an ass. Simple as that, really. But harsh on Pearson, because I think that's the second time he did a drive. Or no, did he jump the start once when he was up really high?
Yeah.
Certainly, when he starts relatively high, he seems to incur penalty of some description.
And then we saw a couple of the back markers come together.
Yes.
Hamilton and Halstead had a coming together at Coram, which pushed Halstead wide out off onto the grass. He was a little bit lucky that grass wasn't wet from the little bit of rain that we'd had, and managed to actually recover the car back onto the circuit.
Again, I'm surprised Nick didn't get a penalty for that, personally, because Hamilton, very, very good. Because, I know people say, well, it doesn't matter, but actually, I don't think it was a that clever move by Hamilton, really. It was a bit clumsy. And I think
We've seen a couple of clumsy moves.
Yeah, we did. I think Hamilton did well. Sorry, Halstead did well to recover it. Yeah, I can't even say Nick H because it's...
At that point, the top 3 started to gap the rest, didn't they? They were in a sort of like class of their own. Camish, Ingram and Sutton up front, just... going about their business, really.
It's worth mentioning as well that Jelly had to pit for reasons I'm not entirely sure of, but another disappointing weekend for Stephen, unfortunately. It's not really worked out since his return back to the series at the start of the season, and this is another weekend to forget for him.
We did have questions over how well he would do it.
You certainly did, yeah.
Front-wheel drive car. I don't think it's all been down to just lack of pace. I think he's been a little bit unlucky, especially with what goes on to happen in race 3 as well. But he's certainly not showing the form that we would have been used to him being in in a rear-wheel drive car.
Yeah. Also, all the drives on the hard tyre by this point have basically ended up back in sort of Suffolk.
Apart from Dobble.
Dobble
was held on really well
he did.
in that race.
It was interesting. In all 3 races, there was one driver on hards that was able to, I wouldn't say make it work, but hold on enough.
The longest.
But, yeah, I'm itching to get the soapbox up. I'll keep it tucked under the desk just for now. We'll get there at the end.
Smiley made a really nice move on to Cook into turn 2. A nice outbraking manoeuvre, and that confidence that Smiley has in that car at the moment, and Lloyd in this race as well, is really apparent. And they just look so comfortable in the car, and they can do what they want with it.
In polar opposites to good moves and confidence in the car, Max Hall, who had a difficult weekend at Brands Hatch, didn't get off to the best of sort of redemption arcs this weekend. Ran it wide onto the grass, through the marble onto the grass, and then in rejoining, T-boned Gordon Shedd. Now, I say rejoining, he couldn't.
He was all locked.
He was all locked up. The car wasn't stopping.
Yep.
It's difficult to stop on grass. Doesn't offer you much grip. And he then T-boned into Gordon Shedd, causing a lot of damage.
Hefty hit.
And I think, luckily, it is on passenger side rather than driver side, because they're nasty when it's on the driver side.
Yeah, it was on the rear quarter as well, and completely broke all suspension parts back there. We saw the mangled door in the pit lane afterwards. And I think it's fair to say Shedden was less than savoury about his comments.
Yeah, he wasn't happy. I mean, on the radio with Alan Hyde, I think he referred to him, and I think this is what I remember him saying. Was it a lunatic? Or it was. Okay, there you go. And I have to say, on the Hall's part, look, he's obviously a rookie racer. He's obviously learning his racecraft. However, I would say that's 2 from 2 now, which I would put down in the poor category of mistakes.
One thing I think Shedden, obviously that comment came in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And you saw in the replay that he pointed down the line at their garage, etc.
I think once Shedden watches that back, he'll have a little bit more understanding. He won't be happy about it still. No. But he'll have a little more understanding about what's gone on.
And it's unfortunate because how many times do we see a car shoot across the circuit and we go, oh my God, it's going to hit something, and it doesn't.
I know.
Yeah, in particular, I think Alton Park a couple of years ago, where in the first corner with everyone bunching, someone went right across and missed everybody. Yeah. So it's unfortunate he's hit Shedden, but I will say, as I say, at Brands Hatch, didn't see Patterson coming, should have done, got the penalty.
Yep.
This is another poor mistake, and I do think that perhaps he just needs to calm down a little bit and just focus a little bit more on the basics at the moment.
Possibly.
Because the other thing to mention as well is that these repair bills don't come cheap. And that's going to be 2 weekends now where he's had to have fairly substantial repair bills on the car. And it makes you worry because the team isn't the biggest team on the grid. I know they've got a good bit of backing sponsor-wise from quite a few. But obviously, you look at his car, he is his own family electrical team. It just makes you worry about completing seasons, particularly as we'll get to later on of the how often one can change a driver.
On lap 6, we actually saw Ford and Hyundai lock out the top 8 positions, which just showed how strong they were this weekend. They were both really on form. We know that the Hyundai has got a really strong engine and does really well down the straights and the fast corners, and the Ford was naturally quick here. Really showing up the BMW.
Absolutely. The clerk of the course then woke up and gave a black and orange flag to Patterson for flapping bodywork. We'd seen it for several laps before the flag came out. I was surprised how long it took for the flag to come out on that one. But you know the rules. If you've got a bit of bodywork flapping, you get the meatball flag. And unfortunately for Patterson, he had a little bit of rear wing poking off the car. I have to say, for me, again, it's difficult. Where do you draw the line? For me, it's not going to... I don't see how it's a damage or a risk to anybody personally. But I also understand that
you don't want stuff like that flying off and
causing punctures and stuff and all that kind of stuff. It's a tricky one. I think you have to put the safety first, albeit the problem is if you start saying, oh, that one isn't risky, then what's
the line?
What's exactly.
Then we found Halstead had to come into the pits for either he'd opened his door or his door had become open coming round Coram.
The same thing happened to Smiley last year, though.
Yeah, I think they alluded to on commentary that there could well have been sort of like fumes or something in the cockpit as well, which meant that he had to open the door and come into the pits.
Potentially.
But yeah, that put the kibosh on his race.
And then nothing really happened until lap 11 after that. Everything sort of settled down. And then Sutton started to attack Ingram, launched one down the inside of Agostini. A little bit
optimistic, wasn't it?
It was a late lunge. Yes. It was a late lunge, and I think Sutton did the right thing. There's a little bit of contact. I personally think, had he forced the way through, he'd have kept the place, because I don't think it was pushed apart. He didn't push Ingram wide. I think he would have rubbed. I think you'd say he rubbed his way through. However, I think it was sensible that he didn't take the risk and decided, you know what, there's no point arguing this out in the steward's room. I'm still going to finish third. It's fine. But I do think he'd have probably kept the position had he
midway through the move he felt like he had to let Ingram back through, but he then had another nibble down at the bomb hole as well, didn't he? Just stuck a nose in, which
is brave
ended badly.
We've seen a couple of times in the Ingram Sutton battles. I'm thinking back to Silverstone last year in the pouring rain as well, where he does like to launch a little, keep Ingram on his toes. And maybe does he feel that Ingram is potentially a bit susceptible to a late lunge because he has tried it a few times?
I think they both enjoy it, and they can trust each other so much because they know how each other races. They know where they can give a little and push a little as well. But I think those two have been racing together for so long. They kind of know how to race each other and know what they can get away with. Yeah,
and I think sensible from Sutton, albeit given that Rainford was able to effectively yeet Rowbottom into a different postcode at Brands Hatch for the to take the race lead. I think he would have got away with it, but why take the chance?
Yep. So Dobble actually finished 9th. He was the highest on the hard tyre, with actually Dan Lloyd winning the independence in this race.
Yep, so for Camish then, he took a fairly drama-free lights to flag victory, took the fastest lap of the race as well. Ingram and Sutton completely podium places. Dan Rowbottom, who would effectively get pole for the next race, being not having to go onto the hard tyre, finishing 4th. Lloyd leading the independent category, finishing 5th. Great result for him. Morgan 6th. Chilton, Smiley, Dobble. DeLeon the highest of the Jack Sears finishes. Then Cook, Rainford, Moffat, Osborne and Aaron Taylor-Smith rounding out the points-paying positions.
Yes.
Shall we move on to race number 2?
Race number 2, yeah. Hall started from the back of the grid. He didn't get out of the pit lane in time to take normal sort of like grid position. I'm assuming down to the amount of damage that they had to repair.
Yeah.
So obviously top 3 would be starting on hards, which would give that massive advantage to Rowbottom starting 4th.
Is it time to put it out or no? It's still got to wait. Okay. So let's say Rowbottom was effectively on pole position because.
But quite surprisingly, the top 3 actually made a decent start on that.
Yeah, they did. Didn't they? Yeah. And Lloyd did well to get himself to 4th by the end of the sort of opening couple of laps. And Rowbottom had made its way into 3rd quite early on as well. Yeah,
Camish was the one who really looked like he was struggling early on the tyre.
He tumbled quickly. And to be honest, he might as well stayed in the garage with a cup of tea and watched this from on the screen of opacity because there was no point in being out here, really. And that's not on him. That's because the car just did not take to the tyre. Whatever setup he had, etc., just did not work with his hard tyre.
On the opening lap, it looked like he got really hung out to dry around Coram into Murray's. And I think by the end of the first lap, he was down to something like 9th or 10th, which from pole position effectively is something that you don't really want.
No, although, as I say, it was only pole in name and name only, given the situation. Hill had climbed to 16th by the end of lap 1, which was a pretty good start from him, obviously coming from the back of the grid. And Ingram was working very hard to keep Rowbottom back as the pack all closed in behind him.
Quite hard. Some say over hard.
Yeah, and then we saw something I've not seen from Ingram.
A collector's item.
I genuinely can't remember the last time I saw something like this happen with Ingram. Effectively lost it.
Not to end in such a way where it came out of the race. We've seen little mistakes along the way, but this was quite a big one. And he admitted after the race it was all of his own doing.
Yeah, basically went in too hot and lost the rear, and it's snapped round on him and into the barrier.
One thing I would say is if that barrier was a little bit further back, I think he would have done really well and he would have caught it. He was so unfortunate, so lucky. He was lucky to hit the barrier in the way that he did, not to do more damage and not to go in forwards or make plenty of mess, and only broke a rear toe link.
It was so unusual that I think everyone's immediate reaction was, we must have got a touch from Rowbottom. And then for the rest of the race, I was looking at the front of Rowbottom's car going, but there's not a scuff mark on that bumper.
It's a change.
But we know on these cars that the lighters are touched. But just bends in the bodywork or leaves a scuff mark or something, and we couldn't see a thing. And then the replays from cars further back seemed to show Rowbottom a long way back when Ingram's slide started. And as you say, after the race, I spoke to Tom, and after a little bit of coyness, he kind of admitted that he made an oopsie.
It was the soft squidgy bit behind the wheel that was the issue.
Yeah, but I can't remember the last time I've seen that, which is which is surprising. And then, of course, Rowbottom was able to take the lead, and then it was Sutton's turn to tumble. Lloyd, first of all, getting past him to get into second, and then Sutton would just sort to, over the rest of the race, tumble down the order.
The high and highs looked ominous in this race.
Yes,
Once
they did.
Rowbottom had got into the lead, there were 4 of them chasing him down, both restart boys, and then Chilton and Morgan. And they all looked like they wanted a bit, didn't they?
Yeah, well, on lap 5, Lloyd launches attack, which Rowbottom resisted. Behind, as you say, Chilton and Smiley were battling as well, to sort of all be ready to pounce on trying to get this race win.
It was then a case of who had what boost left towards the end for that group anyway. Lloyd looked like he'd used quite a lot of boost early on, which then gave Morgan the advantage later on in the race, and Chilton was actually able to make his way past Lloyd towards the end as well.
Yep, but for a bit further back, Dobble was sent for a little trip across the S's by Osborne. Was able to.
It looked so clumsy.
It was
they just
clumsy.
Cut to it, and then one of them was sideways across the grass. I was like, "What's going on here?" And then they all rejoined in the same position.
Yeah, I mean, Dobble did really well to catch the slide and sort of get himself out of it. And as you say, rejoin fairly unscathed, which is probably why penalties were not handed out, because nothing actually changed.
Yep.
It's amazing how the butterfly effect happens, though, isn't it? Given what would happen in race 3, that could so easily have been different, couldn't it?
I know. Dan Lloyd managed to get past Rowbottom into turn 1 on lap 8.
Yes.
With a good move down the outside. I think it was a boost pass.
Yeah.
But then Rowbottom managed to get him back into Hamilton on that infield section.
Great counter-attack.
Nice, cut back out of Agostini and down the inside. And
Sutton's been showing him a few tricks on the sim, hasn't he?
Yeah, that was kind of Lloyd's best opportunity, wasn't it?
Yeah, his tyres were dead after that. I think I've seen him say that, he had taken everything out of his tyres to catch Rowbottom and then make that move. Yep. And then, unfortunately for him, he just got a little too hard and sort of taken the car out of his optimum window. But to be fair, I think if you'd said to him, you won't win the race, you won't get a podium, but you'll have a chance, you will take the lead and you'll fight for he'd taken it, given where he's been this season.
Considering his last couple of weekends, yes, definitely. So then Morgan got through on Lloyd due to his ailing tyres and boost situation, and then Chilton managed to follow him through on lap 11.
And it all kind of petered out from there, really.
Yeah, Robo managed to hold off Morgan at the line. He was trying to grab back sort of like tenths of a second at a time, but never really got to that point where he was able to make an attack.
No, he did say in an interview afterwards that he made a couple of mistakes. I mean, there weren't obvious mistakes on the TV, but it would be that just running wide or just being a little bit slow out of an apex, etc. But all of this meant that Rowbottom was able to take the race victory for Morgan and Chilton on the podium. Lloyd finishing 4th and winning independent. Smiley 5th, fastest lap for him. Dobble, despite the incident, managing to get home to 6th. Cook, then Osborne with the Jack Sears. Rainford, Sutton finishing the highest of the hard drivers. And to be honest with you, working miracles finished that highly.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how.
Then Hill, Aaron Taylor-Smith, Pearson and Dorlin rounding out the points positions. Ball 6 was then pulled, which would give Dobble the pole position for race number 3, which we'll get to after the break. Hello, I know you want to get back to the action as quick as possible, so it's just a very quick reminder from us that we are a completely independently run podcast, and the best thing you can do to help this podcast continue to grow, continue to thrive is...
drop a like down there, get the bell on if you're on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to all our social media channels. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and we're at all podcast locations, Spotify and Apple.
And a review on any of those websites, providers, etc., really does help boost us in the algorithm.
Right, let's get into race 3 then. The most action-packed of the weekend, possibly?
I think so.
So Dobble will be starting from pole position on a soft tyre, and when we saw that happening, we kind of thought this is going to be the one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, he was on the soft, Rowbottom was on the hard.
All 5 drivers behind him on the grid were on the hard tyre, apart from one who didn't get to start the race, in Chris Smiley.
Would he be on the soft?
No, he would have been on the hard.
Oh, he'd have been on the hard as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So the closest soft, I think, was Cook, wasn't it? Who was down in 7th, and obviously Sutton finishing 10th would also be on the soft tyre.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we both said that this was the way the pace he'd shown all weekend as well. This was going to be his best chance. Although I did say you don't rule out Sutton.
No. Ingram started from 24th following his issue in race 1, and Camish finished in a lowly 20th on that hard tyre from race 2. And those would be 2 drivers to watch to see how they came through.
Yep. Talking of Sutton, he was up to 4th position by Agostini. Just what he does, isn't it? It's unbelievable. His first lap is unbelievable, isn't it? Because
it doesn't seem to matter what tyre he's on either.
No, and we know that the first lap in touring cars is so hard because the bunching is huge. You know, you see car, and we'll get to an incident in a minute, which is caused by first lap bunching, etc. And Sutton just always seems to just pick his path through it, doesn't he?
He very rarely gets caught up in anything on an opening lap as well. Which I think massively helps him out. And I don't know whether it's down to luck or whether it's down to skill. It's probably a combination of both.
I think a lot of skill involved. He picks his path, and I think he just sort of goes with it. I think the thing you can say about him is there's no hesitation. Once he's made his decision where he's going, that's it. He's going there. And I think that really carries him through a lot of it as well. Talking of first lap incidents, Jelly was turned into Ingram. It's a difficult one to call. I think I can't make up my mind on the replay. I think he turns across De Leon. You think De Leon might tap him because there's nowhere else for De Leon to go. In any event, De Leon gets a tap from or gets turned by De Leon. How it comes about is a little bit up to interpretation.
Yeah, the replays aren't the best. It's sort of like
You shocked me.
It's caught just off screen from the wide angle, which I think would be the best one. But it does just look like 3 drivers converging at the same bit of track at the same time.
Yeah.
And Jelly definitely comes off the worst.
Yeah, whatever happens, you say, I think it is a racing incident. He gets turned across, hits Ingram hard. Ingram's very lucky not to have got any sort of suspension or serious. I mean, he did say after the race he had a little bit of damage, Ingram, but with serious damage that would have put him out of the race.
One thing I would point out is this was a battle for sort of like 15th.
Yes.
Ingram had already made up 10 places from the start of the race, which was astonishing.
Absolutely, yeah, completely right there. But yeah, so Jelly was then fired into the barrier. That brought out the safety car. Unfortunate for him.
Full lift recovery, took a couple of laps behind the safety car, at which point Smiley had managed to get back out on track following his fuel pump issue that had meant he wasn't able to start the race. Obviously, plenty of lap down, but more setup choices on the car, more testing effectively for him.
Yeah, I say absolutely right. They don't get to do any testing between race events. I think there's only one in the summer that's an official test they're allowed to do. They're not allowed to go and do testing otherwise. So if you get any chance to get back out and make sure things are working, it's better to do it now than on the shakedown at the next event. So yeah, it makes perfect sense from the restart guys.
And on the safety car restart, it was Rainford who was hung out to dry down at turn 2 at Wilson. He was in a 3-wide battle going down into there and got shoved out wide and lost a handful of places. Yeah,
before the safety car was called, actually, Cook did a really good move on Sutton down at the S's, where Bolshy for Cook, but it came off very well and was able to sneak
good
past.
Friends, you know.
Yes, I had heard a rumour, which is interesting. Like us, perhaps when they say about the British Touring Car podcast, good friends, of course. Apart from when it comes to the predictions.
Oh dear, the amount of times that was mentioned on commentary is dear.
Thankfully, I don't think I heard hybrid this weekend though, which is a step in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah, where am I? Morgan got shuffled down on the hard tyre. He was the first one to basically get shuffled through. And Sutton managed to make a lovely move on Lloyd, who was holding back a lot of people at that point on the hard tyre.
He was indeed. We also got shown some replays from earlier in the race, which is helpful at such a late juncture, which showed that Rainfield was making a lot of contact early on with both Cook and Morgan. I only mention this now because it will form part of penalty we'll get to a little bit later.
Sutton managed to outturn Lloyd on that softer tyre and get through quite comfortably. And by lap 8, Ingram was up to 7th.
Yep. Sutton would then get past Lloyd, effectively Tokyo drifting his way around Coram and then just driving around the outside of Lloyd at the next corner. Yep. The tyre offset is incredible.
Oh, wait.
Still waiting.
Lloyd was in free fall at this point and not helped by a nudge from Camish into Murray's, which sent him a little bit wide, and a further couple of cars came through at that point as well. Yeah,
I'm surprised Camish got away of that and didn't get penalised because it
was the similar sort of thing that happened with the 2 nicks in race 1.
Yeah, but it's very sloppy for Camish as well.
Not the only sloppy thing that Camish did in this race.
No, you're right. You might as well jump to that second bit now, then we'll come back a bit. But
yeah, Camish and Pearson came together down at the S's towards the end of the race. It looked like a late move. Day late, dollar short, that kind of thing. And yeah, it was all very messy.
It was indeed. Before this, Sutton was able to get past Cook just by driving around him on the straight, basically. It's
boost pass,
faster car, all that kind of stuff. And he was then able to close up to the back of Dobble and put the pressure on the PMR man.
He closed quickly.
Yeah.
He took, I think it was 8-9 tenths in one lap. Which put him right onto the bumper of Dobble and put him under pressure for the last 4 or 5 laps.
Do you know what, though? Normally, when he's on the back of somebody for a win, I normally turn to you and go, Sutton's going to get this. I didn't feel it this way. Maybe it's because I wanted Dobble to win. I know we're supposed to be independent, but I wanted Dobble to win because of how good he's been since coming into the sport. But I just felt he was going to keep Sutton off.
Yep. By lap 11, all hard runners had basically dropped to the back of the field at this point. I think the highest was running in 16th, which was Morgan. And yeah, Sutton was on the charge. He was closing Dobble in, and he then made an uncharacteristic mistake.
He did. He locked up, which is unlike him, unlike Sutton. I think that pretty much at that point, Dobble let out the biggest of exhales you can imagine. I was able just to poodle his way around the last lap and a half to victory. I think it just shows how much Sutton wanted the win and how hard he was pushing. I think it also showed that he had the opportunity to do so, knowing that Cook wasn't behind him at this point. Cook had dropped off by this point as well. And I think also Sutton would have potentially felt he had, not necessarily had to, but been annoyed over the fact that Ingram was fourth. It'd been known that Ingram had made his way to fourth because at this point he's made a fantastic move on Osborne. Lovely cutback switch move, which is, Ingram and Sutton are the best overtakes on the grid by a country mile. There's no debate on that for me.
And for the majority of the time, clean as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think Sutton, I don't think he'd felt he had to get the win, but I think he'd have thought, for goodness sake, he started in bloody at the back of Beccles, and he's now on top of the podium position. So I think Sutton may have thought, it's not desperate. I need to get the win, but if I can, I'm desperate. I need to try it, and as such, made a mistake.
Dobble taking that win becomes the 8th winner in 9 races this season, with Sutton obviously taking his double win, which I think makes it nice and interesting for the championship going forward.
It does. It might give some people the ammunition to say, well, the tyres work then, don't they?
Yes.
But we'll come to that. Which meant for race number 3 that Dobble 1 was also the winning independent driver. Sutton, the fastest lap in 2nd position. Cook 3rd on the podium. Good result for him. One Motorsport haven't had the best of returns to the series, I think it's fair to say. Good for him to get himself onto the podium. Ingram from the back of the grid to 4th. Osborne, the winning Jack Sears driver, 5th. Great result for him, and I thought he drove quite well this weekend. Osborne didn't really get involved in these scrapes. Dobble aside in race 2.
I think he drove exceptionally well in race 3 as well. Made some nice moves. Yes, he got done by Ingram at the end, but
it's not a drive on the grid. It's not been done by Ingram.
Exactly.
So Camish from the back of the grid to 5th. Good recovery drive for him, albeit that the tyres play their part on that. Rainford and Hill ahead of Pearson. Moffat, Aaron Taylor-Smith, Shedden from the back into the points positions as well. Patterson and Hall getting points for
coming together as well.
No, brilliant. Getting points for their team. And Morgan finishing 15th, the highest of the runners on the hard tyre.
Yes.
Right. Do you want to do awards, predictions, or soapbox?
We'll do awards first of all.
Okay.
Because I've got them in front of me.
Okay.
And we actually agree on a majority of them this week.
Drive of the day. Do you want to go first? Because yours is a bit more obvious.
It's Sutton for me.
Yeah, I can understand
that. The speed that he's shown this weekend to only fall down to 9th or 10th on the hard tyre and then to bounce back up onto the podium again. I think it's a really solid weekend from him, and he keeps his championship lead. I've
gone for Dobble on the basis that I don't think I necessarily get the chance to do it again, and I think that top 6 on the Saturday, finished in the top 10 on the hard tyre in race 1. Obviously, then finished 6th in race 2 and then drove a flawless race 3 to take that first win. I think he just had a very, very good weekend where he didn't make a single error and got the strategy spot on. Okay, you get a bit of luck with the reverse grid, of course you do. But even if he had, if he had 8 reversed, he'd have been on the front or near the front with the soft tyre. So I think he, bit of luck comes into play, but you make your luck.
Yeah, he is actually my surprise good. Jump into that one quickly.
Okay.
Because of those reasons. I really wasn't expecting the Astra to go as well as it did this weekend, in the hands of Dobble, that is. And he's shown his class and his quality in his driving, and he's just able to drag the absolute most out of that car.
Okay, we'll save the villain for last, because that actually is a nice link into the next bit. So yeah, my surprise goods of the weekend was Lloyd, only because he's had a lot of bad luck this season already. He outperformed his teammate this weekend, which is a little bit of a surprise.
Smiley had the bad luck this weekend.
He did.
Race.
But until then, Lloyd had outperformed Smiley, I'd argue, this weekend, and did very, very well indeed. And it's good to see both the restart boys fighting it at the front. It's good to see a bit of competition at the front as well.
It looks like a really good, solid move for them in the off-season to go to that Hyundai. It does, doesn't it? And it looks like a no-brainer now. And hopefully that will continue to progress for them throughout the rest of the season. And it won't surprise me if one or both of them pick up wins this season.
I think they're almost guaranteed to, personally, because that car is so strong.
Your surprise bad? Surprise
bad is BMW, which I think you agree with me on as well. We both sort of hyped them up coming into the weekend. Obviously, they went really well at Brands. They dominated Brands Hatch. We thought all their problems were behind them.
One thing I must say, and this sort of leads into the tyres, I think if it was a hot Snetterton weekend, they would have gone a lot better, because we know how well they do in the hot weather. And they struggled a bit with the cooler conditions. And possibly they were just a little bit off the pace anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how much store I put into all of that, given that Donington was not cold and they were. I know we know about the hybrid stuff, etc., etc. But yeah, we need a bit more data, I think, for BMW to try and work out where they're going to be at this season. As I said, though, at the end of the last pod, things ebb and flow. People were having absolute kittens at the end of Brands Hatch that BMW were going to win every race again.
Bad weekend, good weekend, bad weekend, good weekend. So they're going to fly at Thruxton.
But Josh Cook.
Yes.
As I say, I did say at the end of the Brands one that things will ebb and flow throughout the season. That looks like I might be right on something. To be honest with you, I think also this weekend just showed, particularly with the fight backs from Camish and Ingram, that Napa and Virtue are so clear of the rest of the field this year. I know I've said that the restart Hyundai is good as well, and it is, don't get me wrong, but I think those four are just, they're head and shoulders above the rest of the field this season. Villain of the day, and we both agreed on this, so I can now lean in and get my soapbox out. It's the tyres. The gimmick doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Can I put my 10 pence in?
You go first, because I will get angry. Not with you, unless you're Alan Gow demanding that we have this stupid gimmick.
For the reason that the tyres aren't working at the moment, I think there is too big a gap that has been put between the soft and the hard tyre. I think the offset between the two really doesn't work to make it competitive yet difficult for the top three runners in race 2 to run it, or other runners to run it throughout the day. What I would like to see, obviously we had the soft and the medium at Donington, and I think there was just sort of enough offset, although we saw a double winner. I think the tyre compounds need to be looked at closer, rather than the actual rules of how the tyres have run.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I think if you're going to go extreme soft and extreme hard, then you can't then take all the boost away as well, because we're in this, whether you like it or not, we're in a push to pass championship now with that button. And it is a push to pass. We saw it on the straight with Sutton and Cook.
Yeah.
You can't then give them the worst tyre and take their push to pass away as well, because you've got no chance. And we saw that this weekend. You just tumble because they're on the better tyre as they come past you, and they've got the boost. There's nothing you can do. You can't defend. Well, what can you do? Because you defend in the corner. Every track we go to has got a straight. They just drive past you on the straight with ease. It makes DRS look more sort of complex and less beneficial than this.
The other thing that I would question, and it's something that I've obviously proposed in our rule changes, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it, it's on YouTube, is possibility of running all three tyres across a weekend.
I hate that as well, but yeah.
But then you have the possibility of there being 3 different compounds in the race. Yes, you could run the risk of having soft, medium, hard in how they finish, but then I also think there needs to be a slight adaptation to the compounds of the tyre and how they work and how they run.
I think if we're going to do this tyre gimmick, just take away the mandatory when you have to run it. Just, let them decide when they run the tyres. I don't see why. The thing is, to me, you're punishing a driver for winning a race or finishing on a podium, which is nonsense. And I know people say, well, the ballast did that. And yes, it did, but the ballast didn't make it impossible to then race the second race. It made it harder. I know people hate the ballast, and I'm a little bit of its defender, given what we've had to replace it in hybrid, and this, in my opinion, hasn't worked at all. but the ballast made it difficult, but you could actually engineer around it slightly. You can't engineer around having a tyre on that just does not work.
I think what is really going to show us how the boost works and how changing that level of boost will be next time out of Thruxton, where we've just got a hard tyre.
Yeah. People
will be mandatorily asked to run that in all 3 races. It doesn't matter where you finish. And then we will see how much of a discrepancy in the boost will then change finishing orders and stuff like that. I fear that we'll probably get a race 1 and a race 2 winner the same.
Well,
we'll see.
One other option is that they could just say mandate tyres for all rounds. This is a medium round. This is a soft round. And I don't know. I just, what we've got just doesn't work. And I agree with you. Donington was different, but that didn't work either because we've got the same. Was it exactly the same podium more or less?
Not quite. But one driver different, but yeah.
But yeah, so that didn't work either.
No.
So that didn't work. And actually in race 3, didn't Sutton come through on the hard tyre? Oh, sorry, the harder tyre from memory up Donington to a podium position?
No, he did it on the soft because he finished on the podium in.
Oh, you're right. Yes, apologies.
Race 2.
Apologies. Yeah. So yeah, that didn't work at Donington.
It certainly needs looking at.
Yeah, it does. It's because
it's the compound, whether it's the ruling, whether it's the format of the weekend.
I think, as I say, if you're going to go for such a massive jump, you can't then take the boost away as well. That's my opinion. You can't have both because as Camish, we know Camish is a quick driver. We saw that in race 3. You can't have somebody's dropping down into basically, was it 20 if he finished effectively? Yep. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's not just a case of that's a one-off. That's what happened to the hard tyre runners in race 3 as well. The highest was 15th. And
I will play devil's advocate ever so slightly, even though I don't agree with this at all. As you say, we've had 8 race winners now, which you could argue is testament that this tyre thing works. But what do you want it to do? Do you want it to give different race winners and not cheapen a race win per se, but do you want it to do that, or do you want it to try and keep the championship close? Because it's not keeping the championship close because let's be honest, Sutton and Ingram always finish in the top 3, and whenever they then have to run the harder tyre, and if they don't, whenever they have to run the harder tyre, they fall down the field. So it's not made the championship any closer.
And then they can charge their way back through in race 3 anyway.
Yeah, because they've both got elite cars with elite driving
and with masses of boost because they've fallen so far down,
and they're both really good drivers. So it doesn't work. It's really good we've got different drivers winning stuff. That's fine. But if the championship to make it closer, it's not. We've already got 2 that completely run away at the top of the championship.
Can we tuck your soapbox away?
We can, because we've got a lot to get through still.
One thing I will ask for is let us know your thoughts on the tyres and the format of the weekend and what you think might be the best option.
I go to add to that. If somebody listening out there genuinely likes this as a rule, let us know why. Maybe we're missing something. Maybe we have got so welded anti it that we're missing why it works and why it's good. So if you genuinely think it's a good thing, we're not saying you're wrong. Let us know why you think it's good, and let's have that debate.
Yeah. Shall we get into our predictions then?
Yeah, and then we will finish off with the Hensley stuff.
It hasn't gone very well for me this weekend.
You haven't gone particularly well, no. Mind you,
I've seen a lot of red X's.
Yeah, a lot of crosses you can probably see on the screen if you're one of the video watchers now.
So neither of us got pole position because we went for a BMW, and that really hasn't worked.
No.
Neither of us got Hill as a race winner. You did manage to take home a Camish win.
I think if you go back and listen to the preview, you scoffed a little bit when I said Camish as well. You were surprised that I said Camish.
I felt a little unlucky with Ingram.
Just pulling myself up to be a bit smug.
I felt a little unlucky with Ingram.
Why?
Because he was there or thereabouts.
We didn't win a race.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean it felt unlucky? It's not like he got disqualified or something. He didn't.
Moffat and Smiley again.
I'd say you're more unlucky with Smiley to a degree than.
And then Jack Sears Osborne took home the win this weekend with good consistency.
Yeah, 2 race wins in the Jack Sears for him this weekend, which, as you say, got him there and put him up the order slightly. We both went for De Leon and Rainford respectively. So
yes, we'll get on to your predictions first because there's more success there as well. Both restarts to score a top 10. The restart were excellent this weekend.
Yep.
Really unlucky for Smiley in race 3.
Although,
I don't think either of them would have scored points being on that hard tyre. Only 2 Toyotas score points.
Yeah, I mean...
4 of them did.
Yeah, they didn't score good points, though. I should have probably said they'll score less than insert number here. But they all did score points in the end, so fair enough.
And a BMW on each podium.
Now, De Leon won the... No, I can't argue. No, you're absolutely right. Just fell away for me, that one.
And then I went for Housestead to score points, which...
I don't know what you were thinking. I'm not being rude.
I was being optimistic.
I'm not being rude, but I just don't know what you were thinking.
Yeah.
I think he's more likely to score points at someone like Thruxton or or something like Silverstone, which is a shorter, quicker lap.
Possibly. BMW to outscore Napa. Yeah, let's say about BMW.
I haven't even bothered working out how far off that you were because it was so obvious that you're wrong.
Morgan to outscore Chilton and Crease, or Bensley, who was put into that seat combined, which he did.
Yeah, 28-24, sorry, I made it. So not by much.
It was a lot closer than I thought it would be. Chilton had a good weekend.
And you have to say, had Crease raced,
possibly,
you might have
possibly.
Because I think you'd have picked up one or two. I think you'd have been struggling a little bit on that.
And then to beat the race lap record that was on the Sunday, a new one. No,
nobody did it at all, which was a surprise.
Yeah, which default means that you take that one.
Yeah, it's a hollow victory because I did go for 4.
I'm glad you think that's a hollow victory.
I'll take it because it makes it 8-all in the standings. But yeah, I'm not going to celebrate that one particularly because that is. Although actually, under your system of governance, then I should be celebrating everything I get. But there you go.
Yeah, I'm going to update the alternate championship table tonight, and I might even try and get like a top 10 onto our socials this week to see how things could look.
Compare them
if we went for a different scoring system.
Contrast and compare. I like it. Right, shall we just cover off the possible problems at Virtue then, just to finish off before we do our final thoughts? So obviously, because of the way the British touring cars always works, news is always announced once we've finished the preview. And so it came to pass again coming into this weekend. We were told, I think it was Thursday, the news broke that Crease would not be contesting Snetterton, and instead had handed over to long-time sponsor and friend Bensley, who has got a career in TCR racing. And I think he's done some clubman racing as well in the Civics.
And I must say, he didn't disgrace himself this weekend.
He didn't.
He was fighting, although towards the back of the pack. He was fighting with drivers and with cars down that end.
Yeah.
He didn't get into any unnecessary scrapes or scraps.
No.
And he certainly wasn't well off the back, which we possibly thought he could have been due to having not been in the series before.
Yeah. The problem, however, comes that you cannot just have a carousel of drivers. We've seen this in the past, and it's something that upset a lot of people. It doesn't look good for sponsors. It doesn't look good for the series. And what Touring Cars does not want is, I remember during the mid-2010s, there seemed to be a guest driver every weekend for a team, didn't there? And it just got to the point where it was basically, you have a go, and you have a go, and you have a go. And we can bring in this chap to have a go. And it all got a bit silly.
Yeah.
That now means you can only change your driver 2 times per season.
Yes.
And we all know that Senna Proctor is coming into the series halfway through this year.
Something signed on a dotted line to say that there is a contract for him to race in the car for at least the second half of the season.
Yeah. So it is now our understanding, and it seems to be Tim Harvey's understanding on the commentary. And I know that I've seen on social media that this is going to be argued out with Gow and his team, etc., etc. But it would appear by changing Crease to Bensley, he now can't change that back to Crease.
Yes. Which is going to be interesting.
Which means that
there are a couple of theories that go with this, though, aren't
there? Yeah, so as we understand it, and I say this is not gospel, and this is not, we're not the lawmakers, and I say that a lot can change probably by the time this comes out. But what we understand is that now they've got a choice over at Virtue, who Bensley can continue to race, or they bring in Senna Proctor early.
Yeah.
Unless
Crease can race for the rest of the season, and Senna doesn't get a driver at all.
Senna doesn't get a driver at all. Now, that seems the most unlikely of the options, given that budget has been a problem. I genuinely don't know what they can do here, unless they can do some TBL swaps elsewhere in the team. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens from here.
The only thing that I can see there being a possibility of, and this might not be something that you thought of, is whether there will be any mitigation given for maybe a driver not being fit to race. But I don't think that is going to be the case with how the press releases have come out.
No, and I have to say, look, I'm going to probably get pelters for this. I wasn't a fan of it anyway. It came across very much as a charity drive, and I know it's probably a bit harsh, but basically it was Bensley's home weekend. He wanted to race in the touring cars, so Chris said, I have my seat for the weekend. I don't like it. I'm sorry, I just don't like it. I just don't think in the Premier Top Series that's a good look for anybody involved. For Virtue, who are a top running team, or a serious top running team in the championship battle, with 3 very professional racing drivers on their rostrum in Morgan, Chilton and Ingram. They've reached pinnacles of where they are racing, etc. I don't think it looks good for them. I don't know what the rest of Creasy's sponsors are going to feel about this either. I mean, I assume that it was okay for everybody, but it just doesn't work very well, does it?
It begs the question, has Crease already run out of budget for this season? And this has been in as a sort of like, oh, we'll bring him in for this weekend. Oh, we'll continue in for the next couple of weekends until Senna steps into the car, just to sort of like cover off the financial issues that he could well be having. Because unfortunately, a lot of the stuff in this sport does come down to finances.
I have seen on Twitter that it appears that part of the Creasy team have said that they'll be fighting this and they want Crease back in the car. But put it this way, this whole mess was avoidable by not doing it in the first place. And I don't like it, unfortunately. I know people are going to say, oh, have a heart, all that kind of stuff, and you're being harsh. But I just think that you can't be just giving drives to your mates because it's their home circuit and they're a sponsor, etc., because that's... I know he's a race driver, and as you say, he did well this weekend, but that's irrelevant. Everyone is throwing a lot of heat and shade and pelters towards Alpine for the way they've treated Jack Doohan this year, and the fact that Colin Pinto is also allegedly only on a couple of race deals, and then they might go back to Doohan, or they might... I mean, our phone might ring, you never know. Might put Jack Aitken in the car. Who knows what might happen next year? And they're getting pelters for that, and I think rightly so as well on that front. And I just think that it was already a little bit iffy that he was only doing half the season. I'm not sure that's a good look for anybody either, particularly if you're trying to think about sponsoring a driver. You want to know they can do a full season ideally, and then to have this, just to me, it's just not a good look for anybody involved.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts and feelings down in the comments. It'll be interesting to see people's different points of view on this, and whether you think it's the right to stick by the regulations that are in place, whether you think that Creasy should be allowed back into that car for the next couple of rounds. It was obviously a very difficult circumstance for him to come into that car, having no testing at all, go straight into it at Donington. But yeah, let us know. Do you think Senna should take over for the rest of the season? Do you think that would give him the best fighting chance to get back onto the grid going forward?
Yeah, tricky one. Okay.
Quick roundup of penalty
corner then, and then our final four. So in race one, unsurprisingly, Max Hall receives an official reprimand and 2 penalty points. He's racking them up for causing a collision with Gordon Shedden. That's one way of wording it. This one I feel really sorry for him, because so Aidan Moffat was disqualified from round 7 of race 1 for exceeding the overboost time per lap. I can't believe he doesn't cut off. So the driver's supposed to count 15 seconds then? Because that's madness.
I assume it's down to possibly a programming error, and he's not the only one that's fallen foul.
No, because Shedden also in race 2 was disqualified for the exact same thing. And now, if it is we don't quite know how it works. If it is a case that they've got to count it themselves, that's ludicrous.
Yeah, I don't think it's as analog as that.
I hope not.
Counting it themselves, because you've got plenty of other things to be doing whilst you're in the race.
So I do feel a little bit for Moffat and Shedden on those ones, because to me that's something you can't really be in control of.
No.
In race 2, Jake Hill received a verbal warning for gaining an unfair advantage. I love this bit, whether inadvertently or not, for a contact around Taylor Swift. We didn't see us on the cameras. We don't know what happened. What I'm hoping is that obviously after Brands Hatch we got released the onboards of all the incidents that they looked at that week. I'd love them to do that every round. I think that's a brilliant thing if they do. We'll see if that happens. And in race 3, Jake Hill received a 1-second penalty for obtaining an unfair advantage, again whether inadvertently or not, with Ronan Pearson. And then also Charles Rainford received a written reprimand for obtaining an unfair advantage, whether inadvertently or not, for contact with Josh Cook and Adam Morgan at the start of the race.
Pushy at the start of the race, didn't he?
I do think that's slightly harsh for giving a written reprimand for what is effectively first lap bunching and knocking. I mean, I would argue if I was Charles Rainford's lawyer, which of course I'm not, that if you were to look back at the cameras across the whole grid, that the same thing would have happened up and down the grid. He potentially got a bit unlucky. He was the onboard car this weekend. But anyway, that is penalty corner.
What were your thoughts of Snetterton as a whole?
I thought that it was a lot quieter than usual. Now, I don't know if that was because it was over bank holiday weekend.
Leading into a half term.
Where people were away. But that is the quietest I've seen Snetterton, I have to say. I thought the racing was okay. I don't think it was a brilliant weekend of racing, but I don't think it was a poor one either.
Weekend, there was action throughout all 3 races, which
I'd
is
say
not
it was
quite
solid.
what we could have said about Brands. The first one was a little bit stationary back there.
Yeah, I'd say it was a solid weekend, if not spectacular. I do think, I'll give you the driver standings as a final parting gift, that whatever they've tried to do in the off-season to try and make the championship more competitive hasn't worked, because you just saw this weekend that Ingram and Sutton are just very, very good and ahead of everybody else in the field. I don't know what I feel at the minute. I feel a little bit, not down on the season already, because it's still very early, but I don't think that all the rules and all the changes that were showed us have delivered what we'd hoped they would do so far.
Yeah.
And I am slightly worried that we've now been to 3 events, and I have to say Donington Park opening weekend I thought was quieter than usual.
Yep.
Brands was quite busy.
Yeah, it was. But it is the smallest track.
Knock Hill might be smaller, but yeah. And then obviously Snetterton this weekend. I know it's a big track at Snetterton, but I found it strange that we got there not late, but not as early as we normally would do, and we were able to find a spot at Agostini with consular ease, which is unusual.
It did fill up a little bit more after that, but
it did.
Yeah, it did feel like the crowd was slightly lacking.
Yeah, just even when I walked through the paddock with you, we're down the pit lane, we were able to walk and stand for a long time gazing at Toyota's broken panels without sort of being in the way and about people trying to jostle to get past. And that I think was the test or the evidence for me about how quiet it was.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Thruxton works out. Obviously, we've already mentioned with there only being one tyre that weekend. We'll have a preview coming up for you of that weekend. And until then, we've got Sutton leading the championship, going ahead with 132 points from Tom Ingram on 117, followed by Jake Hill back on 92. We've then got the 2 Dans in Rowbottom and Camish on 85 and 83 respectively, followed by 3 Hyundais actually in Morgan, Chilton and Smiley, with Rainford and Dobble finishing off at the top 10.
Yeah, to a quick run through won't do all of them, do the independent drivers, because that's quite interesting this year.
Yes, it is. It's getting very tasty at the top. Obviously, with Dobble having such a strong weekend and Smiley not finishing in that final race.
4 wins for him now in that category as well.
Yeah, he has a 2-point lead with 143 to 141, with Josh Cook back on 129 in 3rd. And then Dan Lloyd, obviously been a little bit unlucky this season, back down in 4th with 99 points.
What's fascinating about that is that Cook is in 3rd with no wins.
I know.
And then Lloyd is behind him with 2.
Yep.
And then that is very interesting.
Yeah, and then in the Jack Sears Trophy as well, we've got Darrell Leon leading the way from Charles Rainfield with a 7-point gap there, and a further 4 points back to Ronan Pearson and then Sam Osborne. I
will just say, actually, I don't want to keep going forever more, but that's quite good from Pearson, given that Toyota aren't really where they expect to be, and to him to still be in the Jack Sears. But again, it's testament to what we always say about the Jack Sears. If you want to win it, you've got to finish.
Yeah, you certainly do.
And that's what Pearson's been doing. Thruxton next. We're not going. That's the first one we're not going to this season. Next year, we're hoping to get to Thruxton.
Sofa surfing.
Sofa surfing and curry eating, which would be nice. So we'll be back with a full preview for that in due course. Until then, thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.